And now, of course, without any further ado, we're inviting back to the stage Wayne Huang. He did a great panel about CBDCs as well as what stablecoins mean for global monetary policy. And now he will be talking more about how crypto and regulation and regulators kind of view stablecoins. Thank you very much. Wayne Huang, everyone.
All right. Thank you. And we are going to be talking about stablecoin-related coin. Why is it relevant to you? Well, I'm an engineer by background, and when I started to build financial services on the blockchain, I realized something. It's like we're running an airline. We're flying airplanes. And if we're not careful and we let some terrorists onto our airplanes, they will turn our airplanes into missiles, and we can cause major destruction. And it's very scary. So a little bit background about us, the XREX group. We run an XREX exchange. It's digital asset exchange and wealth management platform, crypto-enabled, and we're registered in Taiwan as a virtual asset service provider. We will also launch XREX Pay in October. It's stablecoin-enabled B2B cross-border payments, and it's licensed here in Singapore under the Major Payment Institution license. So that's what we do. Illicit usage and abuse via stablecoins. There's basically two categories that we've seen so far happening on our own platform. The first category is money laundering and tax evasion. So these illicit users, they try to pass our KYC, and then they deposit fiat, buy stablecoins, withdraw. The motive is this. The cost of money laundering, depending on the type of money, is roughly 30% to 40%. How much do we charge? Under 0.05%, right? So there is huge incentive for all of these illicit users to try to launder money through us. Even if we work with law enforcement and capture a lot of their capital, hey, it's 30% to 40% versus 0.05%. So they really don't care if they lost some of that capital seized by law enforcement. So that's the strong motivation. Our solution is KYC technology, KYT, know your transactions, and transaction monitoring. Don't have time for details, but I'll show you one algorithm that we do. Here's a distribution. Every dot is a group of users that are using the same mobile phone. The bottom, the x-axis, is how old this mobile phone is. The y-axis is the mobile phone's current price, and we connect to a lot of e-commerce platforms to acquire the current price of that device. And we care about, our algorithm care about the dots right here. Because these are very old phones that are very cheap. So they could be phones that are automated in a formed fashion used by illicit users together with mule accounts, right? So when our system identifies these phones whose manufacturer serial number is very close or exactly the same, and that was released a long time ago, and that's cheap, then we look into them, okay? Because we often will find something bad there. So that's money laundering, but it's not the biggest pain point for us. The biggest pain point is scammed victims buying stablecoins and sending to scammers in a pig butchering or romance investment type of scams. Why it's such a big pain point? Well, first of all, they deposit Taiwan dollar. They're scammed, right, over a period of, it could be 4 months to 2 years. They're scammed, and the scammers handhold them. They come to KYC with us. They know exactly what to do. They know how to answer our questions. Then they deposit Taiwanese dollar, buy stablecoins, and then withdraw first to an intermediary, and then ultimately to the scammers. Okay? Now, if they're trying to withdraw directly to the scammers, we will often detect these scam wallets because we built our own technology. So what they'll do is they'll go through intermediaries. Sometimes it could be their personal wallet, and they know how to download and install that because the scammers handhold them. Or it could be a foreign exchange. that's not really working that closely with us, and they'll withdraw there and then ultimately send to scam wallets. The challenge here is scammed victim profiles are very random. They look like normal people, and actually they are normal people. Their mobile devices do not have a lot of characteristics that we can detect. So they're more difficult to detect during KYC. And their trust is with the scammers. They totally believe in their fake lovers, their fake friends, over what our customer success team has to say to them. And sometimes law enforcement as well. So it takes a long time for us to gain their trust. Therefore, we have come up with multiple proprietary algorithms to detect these victims. At its core, what we do is we have to identify and track organized crime groups' vault architecture over a long period of time, meaning that we have to trace back. This talk is, a lot of it is about tracing back, right? Why? Because these organized crime, they don't often change their vault architecture. So once we know the vaults that they're using, the code vaults that they've been using for years, then we lock our algorithms to those vaults and trace backwards, and want to see which type of stablecoins are ultimately flowing into these code vaults and where they're coming from, and whether some traffic is coming from our own exchange. Tracing backwards. And we need to detect the initial stages of a scam when small amounts are sent and returned. So these romance investment scams, they start with a few $100s, right? Ask you to buy a few hundred USDT, send somewhere, send to a fake platform. Oh, you've made some money. Now they'll tell the scammers will handhold these victims to withdraw all of that money, ultimately sell that into fiat currency, withdraw into their bank account. See, you've made money. And it is this stage that we need to detect that money flow. And we detect that money flow by tracing backwards. If small amounts of money is flowing ultimately into these cold vaults, we trace back and see where those monies are coming from, because that's the initial stage of scams. And then what we do is we suspend the account, interview, and wake the user up from scam. And that's really difficult. So sometimes we work with specialized law enforcement that really know how to do this. Because of this effort and research, we started an operation called Cluster and Seize. So we analyzed more than 15,000 scam wallet addresses of of almost 2 million transactions. And these victims are directed to 15 exchanges and were scammed of more than 1.5 billion US dollars worth of crypto. And these are the exchanges and their transaction numbers. Taiwanese exchanges made up of about 22%, and foreign and offshore exchanges 67%. All of these scam wallet addresses belong to Taiwanese victims. And we auto-clustered them into 150 groups, crime groups. And a lot of these groups precisely match groups that law enforcement has been tracking. So which proves that this works, the algorithm works. And through a Tether law enforcement and XREX partnership, this is the process that we execute. Law enforcement uses blockchain analytics from criminal-owned vaults, cold vaults, trace back to identify victim deposit wallets with exchanges, right? So every day, actually, if you know the code vaults, you can see every single transactions that's happening. So you can actually know every single new victim every day, and you identify those victims that are coming from exchanges, and you acquire victim identities from these exchanges. Then law enforcement contacts these victims and encourage them to file their testimonies. A lot of these scams go uncaught because if it's romance scam, people do not want to report themselves, especially if they're already in a relationship or if that they're married and have kids. So it takes special law enforcement to make them understand that everything that they say, none of what they say is going to be made public to anybody else, right? And produce forensics reports that link from victim testimonies to criminal-owned vaults. Finally, obtain court-issued order, work with Tether to seize and return. And we've seized more than, the law enforcement seized more than 250 million worth of USDT so far. And because of these efforts, we launched a free tool called XREX X-Ray for everybody to use, and there's a special version for law enforcement if they register with their work emails. And finally, this is a separate case. We had a platform in Taiwan that's been known to be matchmaking between child pornography sellers and buyers. And it's been around for a few years, and it wasn't busted yet. And we decided to publish a public report analyzing all of the stablecoin flow on that exchange from both the sell side and the buy side. And a few months ago, more than 400 people were arrested and prosecuted in Taiwan who have interacted with that platform. So with that, I want to offer my conclusion. Do stablecoins facilitate crime? Stablecoin transactions are permanently stored and publicly accessible on decentralized ledgers. No matter how powerful a criminal is, she cannot destroy or manipulate evidence. Right? So when we analyzed that crime that we just showed you, we're not law enforcement. But because the ledger is permissionlessly accessible, anybody can analyze that crime. And it doesn't matter if you're the president of Taiwan, you cannot go and try to destroy some evidence or try to destroy past transaction records. Everything is preserved forever on-chain. So then, if that's the case, why are they using stablecoins for crime? We believe that a window existed during which law enforcement and the judicial system, the judges, right? Because in order to get a court-issued seize order, judges have to understand blockchain forensics reports. Law enforcement and the judicial system were unfamiliar with the new technology. Investigative tools weren't that ready. Exchanges and wallets weren't familiar with the threats, but this window is quickly closing. So thank you for your time today. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's incredibly important to talk about how we make this space safer. Kind of a little bit of a funny story. I was having a conversation with my mom a couple of years back when I was starting my stablecoin project, and she said, "You're working in crypto?" I said, "Yeah, but Mom, don't worry. It's not NFTs or anything. It's just stablecoins." And she sends me an article about Tether's accounting practices. So, for sure, stablecoins also have an image